My name is Marie. I am the CEO, as Will mentioned, of this company, which is based here at Dix, actually, here in Trondheim. I'm one of those crazy entrepreneurs who we've all heard about, who's like struggling every day to like find clients and is building something from scratch. A couple of years ago, when I started this company, we had like zero clients. We had no team. We had no funding. Today, we are, as Will mentioned, we are a company with 10 employees, offices in Trondheim, Oslo, and now Philadelphia. And we have paying clients and investors on boards. So I've been part of this journey, which is hit play. Yeah. All these technical problems when you start. Let's see, there. Okay, that's me. So I was thinking about being part of this journey as an entrepreneur, as a founder. I want to share with you some thoughts that I have had myself with the history I've had and my own personal development in the phase where I've both landed clients, investors, and built this tech company. As a person, like my background is a technical engineer. I have a business degree from here at NTNU. I've been abroad. I'm also quite creative from that sense. I've been into music, I've been designing stuff, and what I care deeply about is actually investing in people and the way people can come together to make better things together. So when I was asked to come here today and talk about investments in a creative forum, which is not only tech startups, but also creative people who work in different industries, my immediate idea was, let's not talk only about the investment process, what investors are looking for, but let's think about it in a broader sense. And I want to share with you today some of my experiences, some of the psychological drivers I've been working with that drives us in terms of how we make decisions, because this is such an important part of how you land investments, how you're going to sell your product, how you're going to get your first client on board, and also how you're going to convince people to join your team and the crazy journey you're actually showing them. So with that in mind, I want to show you guys how this actually tags into the creative part as well. I mentioned to you that I'm working in Capeesh, and Capeesh is quite a creative company. So while we're using a machine intelligence to create tailored language learning in order to actually offer companies with the help them with workforce development for companies that hire non-native speakers. We're actually using this machine intelligence together with a lot of creative capabilities on the team. So we work together with game designers, UI, UX designers on creating something that has emotional design, because we know that when you design something, like the way things look and are perceived, it's all about how to attract and engage. And I guess all of you who work in creative industries, you know all about that. And attracting and engaging clients and customers and users is actually like one of the first things you do when you persuade somebody to actually believe in your idea and enjoy your products. And that's something I love about what we do. Now, on the topic of today, I said I want to talk about principles of persuasion. But as I mentioned to begin with, investment can mean so many things, right? It can mean investing in a company. It can mean how do you invest your time better and more structured in order to actually land the things you want to do. Personally, I also think about investment in how I invest in myself as a founder, how I attract other people around me that are better at me and actually the skill sets I need to develop in order to become that entrepreneur I need to be to actually build this company. And it's also investment in my relationships. My relations, be it clients, be it my friends and family, be it the relations I do have to investors. And the things I want to share with you today is a little bit of the story around like how do you actually build and persuade and build those relationships. And the first thing I want to talk about is the team setting. Now, for you guys who are looking for investment today, you will hear all investors, no matter where they come from, everybody's talking about the team. You know, like the idea, like technology, it doesn't seem to like matter as much as the team anymore. I mean, of course, it matters. It's a ground pillar of what you're building. But when you meet investors, the first thing everybody's going to ask about is like, who's your team? How does your team look like? And the way you put together your team, it's all about likability. It's not only about the complementary competences that you bring on board, but it's also about what kind of personal bonds have you created with the people on your team? Is this people that are these people that you want to work with for a long time? Can you actually do the struggle together? Can you do a marathon together and still be friends? I've had that in mind all the time when I've been building companies, and this is sort of like the principle of likability. It's something all of us do every day, right? When I founded the company Capeesh, the first thing I thought about was, is this a team that I enjoy working with? And can we also stay friends in addition to actually being colleagues? Now, having this in mind as a principle is how we date, right? We're dating all the time. And the same thing happens when you meet with your team, when you bring team members on board, but also when you meet with an investor. Nobody marries on the first date, right? So you will have good investor meetings, but you will definitely have bad investor meetings. So investing that time in the beginning of all meetings on finding that common ground of interest with that other player, it's so important. And it's something I've taught myself personally, because when I was a novice entrepreneur, I remember my first meetings with both investors and clients, and I would think about the business plan. I would think about everything I had to prepare in order to go into that meeting, and I would start the meeting talking about my business and what I was going to do. But of course, I hadn't then built a relationship with the clients. I knew nothing about what was the interest from their perspective, what did they care about? And from their perspective, they're meeting so many entrepreneurs all the time. So what made me different? And the same thing I've experienced with clients as well. So I found that over the years, using those personal skills of likability, the skills we're using when we're dating somebody or we're becoming friends with somebody, is such an important thing to remember when you're meeting with investors and clients as well. And I actually want to share with you just a story. I had a client who came to visit here in Trondheim. It was a language school client who was teaching minority speakers how to get a job. And when we met, we started talking about not the product itself or the technology, but the mission of what we're trying to achieve, right? And we became so enthusiastic in that meeting because we shared the same vision, and we became friends. And I would say, like, today we're on such a personal level friends, although she's a client and I'm the supplier here. So we developed a relationship where she would start to actually add me on Facebook. She would send me messenger text suggesting inputs of what we could do, clients we could talk to, how they're going to purchase our products. And she would continue to spread the word about Capeesh in media and to other players. And that was just because we had that personal meeting to begin with and built that friendship basis. Now, another fun fact is actually that this is not just something I'm telling you here now, it's actually been studied and researched. I found that there's been a study conducted at some of the largest universities, well-known universities and business schools in the United States, where they had two study groups, where one of the both groups were supposed to do negotiations. And the first group was asked to spend 1 hour to negotiate one issue and come to an agreement as fast as possible, while the other group was told, spend the 10 first minutes of the meeting to find some common point of interest with the client you're negotiating with, and then come to an agreement. And the very interesting thing about this research behind is that it showed that in the first group, 55% came to an agreement, whereas in the second group, 80% came to an agreement, and they were 90% more satisfied with the outcome. That's quite interesting. But let's think about how do you build when you're building a company? Something very important that I want to mention is, imagine starting from scratch. Imagine having no clients, no funding, no team members. You're practically a dead company, right? So imagine if you worked in Eggs Design or Trender Energy or I don't know what companies you guys are from. Imagine there were no clients there tomorrow. No clients, you lost all your team members, you don't have the funding. What do? That's basically where you start out when you're starting a company, right? And that's where I started. We had some amazing research behind us, but that in itself isn't enough to make people really believe that you are the guys to build what you're building. And if you're going out there to sell something, it's really, really hard to brag about yourself, right? even though you may want to. So I built this amazing team, but I understood that in order for me to actually build up the authority that I needed to get the job done, and my job done at this phase was I needed to actually land investment for this team to be able to develop the product that would sell to clients. Now, how do you build an authority to get and land the meetings with the investors that are relevant, the people that can actually fund your company, the people that are hands-on, and not just some people that are, I want to help you guys think about what you need to learn in terms of investment. And my experience is be critical, guys. I mean, I've been working here in the Trondheim scene for a long time, and I mean, the people that come to you and say, we want to offer you mentoring services to help you guys land investments, those are the good helpers, but you will end up discussing different models of your business model canvas. These are not the best mentors to actually get you to the job done. And in order to build authority, I knew that to build authority, I needed to find my hero. Who's my hero in this space, who can teach me skill sets that I don't have, but also has a wider network into those investor relations and also the creative industries, which is important to Capeesh and what I'm building. So I actually found a mentor that I researched and I had heard about and briefly met before. Her name was Anniken Fjellberg. She's based in Oslo. She's an investor. She's also a serial entrepreneur she's been doing a lot of things in the creative space, and she's built up 657, which is the creative community of startups and designers and creative fields. So I actually flew down to Oslo and booked a coffee date with Anniken. And I said, Anniken, we have this amazing team of tech entrepreneurs and people with research from Trondheim, but we need to land investments. So I need to get the proper introductions to VCs and like seed investors who are actually willing to invest, not just like the players that are willing to help, because I'm getting the job done. Now, what happened then was that she was impressed that a Trondheim team would take the route down to Oslo, would actually approach her, even though she had a busy schedule. But the thing is, the people we want to have on board, no matter how busy they are, if you're trying hard enough, like they will find time if you are motivated enough. So Anniken came on board, and what happened then was I was not only that entrepreneur with that skewed relationship where I would contact investors without they hadn't heard about me before, right? That's a really hard spot to actually get the relevant meetings. Now, the dynamic that started happening was that Anniken started introducing me to her networks of the people she knew was going to be good investors for the phase that we were in and help us and secure the funding we needed. Now, the reason why we all need a mentor, right, in this phase is because the right mentor will bring in the competence that would take you further. Anniken would tell me, these investor clusters, these guys like to work together. If you're talking to these guys, you should also mention these guys because this will be your investor cluster then. But when you meet with these guys work together with these investors. And you need to know these things before you go into the meeting. There is no way I could have known all that information without getting the right mentor on board first. And now this is actually building an authority, because the principle behind authority is that people will listen to credible experts on their fields. Now, I couldn't brag about myself, but I could have Anniken brag about me to investors, but also to clients. And that is actually what has led me to a lot of introductions, to actually be on the stage, in the Google stage in London, where I was presenting next to the 40 most powerful women international. That is the power of actually having a mentor on board that is useful, relevant, and your hero. So I will encourage everybody to use that. But I would also like to share you guys some real examples of not only like the authority, how you use your own authority, but how you could use other principles of persuasion to actually persuade investors. And this, to you guys that work in creative industries, is also relevant to clients. I'm going to send show a real email here, because when I was working in Silicon Valley, it was in late 2018. That was at the time where we were landing our first pre-seed round. And I had at the time been talking to a lot of Norwegian companies, but I thought, it would be really cool to have like an international VC come on board. So I would sit there and have investor meetings over Skype with lots of different VCs. But again, you want that mentor to come in, right, and teach you how do you really do these things. So I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who is Jin Han, who's a 14 under 30 entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. And he was mentoring us, and I said, Jin, why don't you sit in on my investor meeting? Why don't you observe how I'm doing the investor meeting with investors, how I'm doing the demo, but also follow me and see how I'm doing the follow-up. So he was actually doing this, and funnily enough, I was in Silicon Valley having a meeting with a French investor. But the email follow-up was the interesting part, because we guys, at least me, I'm so Scandinavian by nature, I'm so Norwegian, and I need to change that when I'm actually doing this job. Because the meeting went perfect. But after the meeting, I said to Jin, I'm going to write a follow-up. I'm going to use my authority. I'm going to show these investors that we're going to land this investment soon. How do I do that? How do I persuade them in the best possible way? And he said, well, Marie, make me a draft, and I'll look at your draft and tell me what I think. So I wrote a draft, and my draft would be all Norwegian. It would be like, hi guys, thank you for a nice demo meeting. I'm sure we both have more questions to follow up. We are in the process of closing a pre-seed round of 3 million NOK. But in the original email, I would say, we will be aiming at closing the round by November 15, which means that we will need a decision quite soon. And then I would say, at the end of the email, I would say, I am so happy to follow up, guys. If you have any more questions, feel free to call me or send me a meeting invite. And I showed this to Jin Han, and he was like, no. You can't send that follow-up to an investor, Marie, because if you do that, it's not going to show you as an authority. Now, this relationship is skewed from the start. It's always going to be the entrepreneurs pitching upwards to investors. You need to skew that relationship. You need to make sure it's you pitching on the same line as the investors. Use authority, but also use the principle of scarcity. Create a feeling of fear of missing out for these investors. They're already interested in you. Don't be that entrepreneur who asks questions about follow-ups, let it drag along, waiting months for the investment to happen. Because investors love that. They love sitting on the side, being like, this is interesting, but maybe you can follow up for a little bit longer. We don't have any urgency. So Jill was like, you change that email, and you're going to change that email to saying, we're not aiming at closing the round at November 15. We are closing the round at November 15. Even though if you're not, that's what it's supposed to say in the email. And that means we will not be needing a decision from you in a short time. It means in 2 weeks. Say 2 weeks, because that is urgency, guys. And he said, be aware that you should write in the email that you have no hurt feelings if they should decline. Because that is where most entrepreneurs fail. Because we're so afraid of getting a no. But not getting a no when the no is really the answer is the most scary part, right? Because then you end up dragging along lots of investors who are never going to invest in your company and are not interested. So he said, write that in your email and use your authority to actually drive that conversation. And then, of course, he said, remove that question at the bottom. If they're interested and have questions, they will ask you. They will do the follow-up. So this is kind of a mix between the first principle, which is building up your credibility with an authority, but also using the principle of scarcity. And this worked really well on our side because we heard back from this investor the day after. And today they're actually one of the international investors in our pre-seed round. Now, remember the principle of scarcity you guys have probably heard from a lot of different industries is that fear of missing out, the offer is out in 2 days, limited the pricing of the product, if you order within 10 days, it could be tickets are about to run out. So there's multiple ways you can use the principle of scarcity combined with authority. But when you're on the topic, I want to actually show you guys, these are some principles that works well with investments, but it's also from a company side, it's also things that works very well if you're working with clients. So I also want to show some other principles that also work very well in meetings. Because when you've landed investments and you've got that authority on board, the next thing that's definitely going to happen, right, is that you need to prove your concept. Is it your creative skills? Is it your products? How are you going to land clients and customers? And what do customers actually say about your products? That's the thing everybody's going to ask about, investors as much as other clients. So I want to show you guys some other principles that I have actually learned from that process of selling. And I'm not new to selling, I can say. So the thing I can brag most about was 4 years ago, I sold a physical book project to the leader of Innovation Norway Trøndelag. And to be honest, I think that's like my best sell ever. But something I want to mention here is something I find really cool, which is reciprocity. I mean, you guys are probably in sales meeting all the time, meeting potential clients, and I am as well. And something I have learned is that in meetings, especially when you are new, the risk that everyone is feeling in that meeting is, oh, you're having a meeting with me, you're a startup. How do I know your startup is not going to be dead in 3 years? Do you have enough funding to survive? Do you have other clients? Is the product ready? Will it be ready by the time we'll need our new implementations? There are so many risk barriers, and you need to do what you can to lower them as fast as possible. So something we get asked a lot, and I probably assume that you've been asked a lot as well, is, well, can we have a free demo? Can we have a free trial of the product for a certain amount of time, just to see that it works and just to see that you guys can deliver? And that is like totally fine. And I'm like, yeah, of course, I can give you guys a free demo. But the thing I've learned is that never give away something without asking for something in return, right? Because this is a process all clients will use all the time. And when you give away a free demo, you're actually investing in that client. So if you're investing, let's maximize the chance for a better return of investment, right? So what I've learned is that clients, when you work with them and they ask you for something, if you provide them with a gift, they will feel obliged to return the form of behavior or service or product that they have received, no matter what. It's just it's just a feeling that is there when it happens. So when that happens, whenever a client asks me if I can provide them with a free demo, I would then ask them for something back. And a concrete example was this last year, and now I'm actually working with one big supermarket client here in Norway, who is looking at if this could be a way to actually teach their foreign employees the language they need to do in their job. And of course, when you work with a supermarket client, it's huge. They have integration systems. It's hard, right? So there's lots of questions. They asked me, can we do a 1 month trial with users from all our regional departments? And it's a lot of work to follow up. And I said, let's do that. But in that process, I would come back and I would say, let's do that. But maybe, if in return, maybe you can tell me something about your timeline for decision making. Can you tell me about when the next decision making will be? What questions will you ask the demo users in this demo report for evaluation? And what will be the decision making points that will actually enable your leaders to make a decision about investing in buying our products? And I would ask all these questions for follow-up, because information is also giving. And getting that information can be hard if it's not asked at the right time. So that's something I always remember, that when I give away something for free, that is my time to ask for something in return, and I will get very valuable information that can actually help me drive the decision. Now, this is not a client we've landed yet, but we're in the process. So I just wanted to share this idea with you guys, because this is one client that we've learned a lot from doing those principles and actually asking the right questions. But the interesting thing is that you can do a lot of things to actually build that authority, that likability, and limit those barriers that clients do have. And I'm also working with a lot of other industries in our company. We have industries in aquaculture, for instance. It's kind of funny because you're in gamified language learning, but then there's people in HSE with work helmets that use Capeesh, right? So whenever I'm in those meetings, I would ask those players initially when they're piloting our technology, can you give me some sort of commitment? Can you say something loud? Because if the clients in an early phase are willing to actually commit to actually saying something loud, if it's a public space, if it's about giving me a quote about how they're going to use the product and how valuable it's going to be, that is so valuable to me going on later, because commitment is commitment that will show to other clients that other companies believe in our products. So why shouldn't you? And the reason why this is so important is consensus. Because what I've experienced a lot is that when I'm going out selling, right now I'm selling to different clients in the NAV group, for instance. We have different players there. And they're always going to ask about, do you have references? Do you have other clients? What are they saying about the product? And then something really interesting is that when you're building those relationships with the clients, you're always like following the clients. You're asking to share the story on their wall. You will be reposting their posts if they mention you. And that is some part of like reciprocity in the game, right? So this was actually a quite fun post because Innovarena, which is like the mother group of a lot of clients we have in aquaculture, they shared a post about Capeesh and they would be like, oh, like happy weekend, guys. We're using Capeesh, and they would make like a fun story on their Facebook page. And to us, that was fun because it made us look good, right? And it was the client who was speaking of us in a public space. But the fun part was that, remember I told you about my friend Iselin, who works like a language teacher in this company, who was an early client? Like she would respond to that post, right? So that client would like post on their webpage, and then another client from another sector would respond to that post and be like, this is so impressive, guys, like we're supporting you guys, and like our users had such a good time with your products. And honestly, like for you in like a small startup, when you have like, as Will mentioned, we don't have that many clients yet. So we're still small, and we're still like, we still have the struggle of actually growing as a company. That is such an important part of the sales process because you're creating consensus. And the principle behind consensus is that all of us, like a client, an investor, ourselves, when we are in doubts, we're going to look at the actions and behaviors of others to determine our decision. And that is what clients do all the time. That's also what investors do all the time, right? So if they're in doubts and they're thinking about buying your products, they will always ask a reference. So now clients will ask me, like, Marie, can we have some references from your side, like users using your product? Of course, I will always reference Iselin, because I know Iselin would be like, she loves me, and she will always love the company, right? Or I would recommend somebody in the aquaculture industry or some of our like most engaged users. So I think these are like, I mentioned to you now 6 different principles that I'm using when I'm looking for a better return of investment, being a sales process or an investor process. And I've been working with it for quite a while, and I can see now that it actually works. So I think that for my main talk, I want to just summarize the different things I've been mentioning to you guys. It's all about authority, likability, reciprocity, scarcity, consensus, and commitment. And I think that's what I had time for doing 20 minutes.